Announcer bot is active. The race session is at Barcelona City. Jason Short from New Zealand is second on mediums. The race dictator from New Zealand is P3 on mediums. Jason Short is P2. Johnny Prince from New Zealand is P4 on mediums. Jason Short is second. Johnny Prince is fourth, 0.6 behind the race dictator. Jason Short is P2, 0.8 behind Toddy Mustang. Johnny Prince is fourth, 0.8 behind the race dictator. Fireball is P8 on mediums, 0.7 behind Crispa. Jason Short on lap 2 is second, 0.4 behind Toddy Mustang. The race dictator from New Zealand is P3, 0.6 behind Jason Short. Jason Short is P2 on mediums, 0.3 behind Toddy Mustang. The race dictator is P3, 0.3 ahead of Johnny Prince. Jason Short is second on mediums, 0.5 ahead of the race dictator. Johnny Prince is third, 0.1 ahead of the race dictator. That Canadian guy from Canada is P4 on mediums, 0.1 behind Dave B Racing. The race dictator is P5. Best lap is a 156.402. 2.008 off the fastest lap. "15 minutes remaining in the session. That Canadian guy is fourth on mediums, 0.3 behind Dave B Racing. The race dictator is fifth. Dave B Racing from New Zealand is P4 on mediums, 0.1 ahead of the race dictator. Dave B Racing lost P4 to the Race Dictator. The Race Dictator on lap 3 is 4th, 0.7 behind that Canadian guy. Chris Butt from New Zealand is 6th on mediums, 0.8 behind Johnny Prince. Chris Butt was 8.1 faster last lap. The Race Dictator is P4, 0.5 behind that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy was 1.2 faster last lap. Fireball is 8th, 0.8 behind Dave B Racing. The Race Dictator is 4th, 0.7 behind that Canadian guy. Fireball is 8th, 1.0 behind Dave B Racing. The Race Dictator is P4, 0.4 behind that Canadian guy. Fireball on lap 4 is 8th, 0.8 behind Dave B Racing. The Race Dictator is 4th, 0.4 behind that Canadian guy. Fireball is 8th, 1.4 behind Dave B Racing. The Race Dictator from New Zealand is 4th, 0.6 behind that Canadian guy. Fireball is 8th, 1.5 behind Dave B Racing. The Race Dictator is 4th, 1.2 behind that Canadian guy. Jason Short is 2nd, 1.7 behind Toddy Mustang. Chris Butt is 5th, 0.9 behind the Race Dictator. The Race Dictator was 1.6 faster last lap. Dave B Racing is 7th, 1.0 behind Johnny Prince. 10 minutes remaining in the session. Chris Butt is 5th, 1.7 behind the Race Dictator. Dave B Racing is P7, 1.1 behind Johnny Prince. Chris Butt is P5, 1.6 behind the race dictator. Chris Butt was 6.6 faster last lap. Dave B Racing is P7, 1.0 behind Johnny Prince. Jason Short is second, 1.8 behind Toddy Mustang. Dave B Racing is P7, 0.6 behind Johnny Prince. That Canadian guy is P3, 0.7 behind Jason Short. The race dictator is P4, 0.7 behind that Canadian guy. Dave B Racing is P7 on mediums, 1.0 ahead of Fireball. Jason Short is second, 0.4 ahead of that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy is P3, 0.1 behind Jason Short. Jason Short is P2, 0.4 ahead of that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy is third, 0.5 ahead of the race dictator. Jason Short on lap 7 is second, 0.4 ahead of that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy is P3, 0.8 ahead of the race dictator. Jason Short is P2, 0.5 ahead of that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy is P3, 0.6 behind Jason Short. That Canadian guy was 12.6 faster last lap. The race dictator on lap 8 is fourth, 0.8 behind that Canadian guy. 5 minutes remaining in the session. That Canadian guy is P3, 0.4 behind Jason Short. Jason Short from New Zealand is second, 0.6 ahead of that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy was 12.6 faster last lap. Dave B Racing from New Zealand is P5, 0.1 behind that Canadian guy. Dave B Racing was 15.5 faster last lap. Dave B Racing passed that Canadian guy for P4. Jason Short is second, 0.4 behind Toddy Mustang. Jason Short was 0.7 faster last lap. That Canadian guy is fifth on mediums, 0.6 behind Johnny Prince. Jason Short is second on mediums, 0.4 behind Toddy Mustang. Jason Short was 0.6 faster last lap. That Canadian guy from Canada is P5, 0.9 behind Johnny Prince. Jason Short is P2. Best lap is a 1:48.064. 0.194 off the fastest lap. Johnny Prince is P5, 0.3 behind that Canadian guy. Johnny Prince was 4.4 faster last lap. Johnny Prince lost P5 to Chris Budd. Jason Short on lap 9 is P2, 0.3 behind Toddy Mustang. Johnny Prince is 7th battling the race dictator. Jason Short is P2, 0.5 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy is 4th, 3.5 behind Dave B Racing. Jason Short is 2nd, 0.4 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy from Canada is P4, 2.9 behind Dave B Racing. Jason Short is 2nd on mediums, 0.3 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy is 4th, 2.6 behind Dave B Racing. Jason Short from New Zealand is P2, 0.6 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy is 4th, 2.7 behind Dave B Racing. Jason Short on lap 11 is P2, 0.9 behind Toddy Mustang. Toddy Mustang was 0.8 faster last lap. That Canadian guy is 4th, 2.0 behind Dave B Racing. Jason Short is second, 0.6 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy is P4, 2.1 behind Dave B Racing. The leader has just finished the race. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand finished first. Jason Short finished P2. Dave B Racing finished third. That Canadian guy finished P4. The Race Dictator finished fifth. Fireball finished P6. Chris Butt is seventh. Chris Butt finished P7. Johnny Prince finished 8th. Broadcast bot is 9th. The race session is at Barcelona City. Johnny Prince from New Zealand is P1 on mediums. Chris Butt from New Zealand is second on mediums. 20 minutes remaining in the session. Race start. Chris Butt is now P1. That Canadian guy is second. That Canadian guy is now sixth. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand is third on mediums. The Race Dictator from New Zealand is fourth on mediums. Toddy Mustang is P3. Johnny Prince is P5. Jason Short from New Zealand is P2 on mediums. Toddy Mustang is third. Jason Short is second, 0.4 ahead of Toddy Mustang. Toddy Mustang is P3, 0.1 ahead of the race dictator. Jason Short is second, 0.2 behind Chris Budd. Toddy Mustang is P3 on mediums, 0.8 behind Jason Short. Jason Short is P2, 0.3 behind Chris Budd. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand is third, 0.4 behind Jason Short. Jason Short on lap 2 is P2, 0.2 behind Chris Budd. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand is third, 0.2 behind Jason Short. Jason Short is second. Best lap is a 151.016. 0.363 off the fastest lap. Jason Short is now first. Toddy Mustang on lap 3 is P2, 0.3 behind Jason Short. Johnny Prince is P3, 0.7 behind Toddy Mustang. Toddy Mustang on lap 3 is second, 0.5 behind Jason Short. "15 minutes remaining in the session. Johnny Prince from New Zealand is P3, 0.7 behind Toddy Mustang. Johnny Prince lost P4 to the race dictator. Toddy Mustang on lap 3 is P2, 0.5 behind Jason Short. The race dictator is fourth, 1.0 behind Dave B Racing. Toddy Mustang is P2, 0.3 behind Jason Short. The race dictator on lap 4 is P4, 0.6 behind Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing was 0.6 faster last lap. The race dictator passed Dave B Racing for P3. Toddy Mustang is second, 0.3 behind Jason Short. Dave B Racing from New Zealand is fourth on mediums, 0.9 behind the race dictator. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand is second, 0.5 behind Jason Short. That Canadian guy from Canada is P7 on mediums, 1.0 behind Chris Budd. Toddy Mustang is P2, 0.4 behind Jason Short. Dave B Racing on lap 5 is P4, 0.7 behind the race dictator. Toddy Mustang is P2, 1.0 ahead of the race dictator. Fireball is P6 on mediums, 0.9 behind Johnny Prince. Jason Short is P1, 1.4 ahead of Toddy Mustang. Toddy Mustang is P2 on mediums, 0.6 ahead of the race dictator. Toddy Mustang was 1.2 faster last lap. The race dictator is P3, 0.2 behind Toddy Mustang. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand is P2, 0.4 behind Jason Short. The race dictator is P3, 0.3 ahead of Dave B Racing. Toddy Mustang is second, 0.7 behind Jason Short. "10 minutes remaining in the session. Dave B Racing is P4, 0.4 behind the race dictator. Toddy Mustang is P2, 0.6 behind Jason Short. Dave B Racing is P4, 0.6 ahead of Johnny Prince. Toddy Mustang is P2, 0.3 behind Jason Short. Dave B Racing is fourth, 0.5 ahead of Johnny Prince. Johnny Prince from New Zealand is fifth, 0.2 behind Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing from New Zealand is P4, 0.4 ahead of Johnny Prince. Johnny Prince is 5th, 0.6 behind Dave B Racing. Johnny Prince passed Dave B Racing for 4th. Dave B Racing from New Zealand is P5, 0.1 behind Johnny Prince. Johnny Prince was 4.9 faster last lap. Dave B Racing lost 5th to Chris Budd. Toddy Mustang on lap 7 is 2nd, 0.5 behind Jason Short. Dave B Racing is P7, 1.0 behind that Canadian guy. Dave B Racing is now 7th. Johnny Prince is P4, 0.5 ahead of Chris Budd. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand is P2, 0.5 behind Jason Short. Chris Budd is P5, 0.2 behind Johnny Prince. Toddy Mustang on lap 7 is 2nd, 0.3 ahead of the race dictator. Toddy Mustang was 0.6 faster last lap. The race dictator is P3, 0.5 behind Toddy Mustang. Toddy Mustang is 2nd, 0.3 ahead of the race dictator. The race dictator on lap 7 is 3rd, 0.5 behind Toddy Mustang. Chris Budd is P5, 0.4 ahead of Dave B Racing. Toddy Mustang is P2, 0.9 ahead of the race dictator. 5 minutes remaining in the session. Chris Budd is P5, 0.3 behind Johnny Prince. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand is 3rd, 0.5 behind the race dictator. Johnny Prince is 4th on mediums, 1.0 behind Toddy Mustang. Johnny Prince lost P5 to Dave B Racing. Toddy Mustang on lap 8 is 3rd, 0.4 behind the race dictator. Johnny Prince is 6th, 0.7 behind Dave B Racing. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand is 3rd, 0.2 behind the race dictator. Dave B Racing is P5, 0.8 behind Chris Budd. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand is third, 0.3 behind the race dictator. Dave B Racing from New Zealand is P5, 1.0 behind Chris Budd. Toddy Mustang is P3. Best lap is a 1:48.046. 0.209 off the fastest lap. Fireball is P7, 0.5 behind that Canadian guy. Toddy Mustang is third, 0.3 behind the race dictator. Fireball is 7th, 0.9 behind that Canadian guy. Fireball passed Chris Budd for 5th. Toddy Mustang is third, 0.4 behind the race dictator. That Canadian guy is P7, 0.9 ahead of Chris Budd. Toddy Mustang is fourth on mediums, 3.7 behind Dave B Racing. That Canadian guy is P7, 1.8 behind Johnny Prince. Toddy Mustang is fourth, 3.8 behind Dave B Racing. That Canadian guy is P7, 1.2 behind Johnny Prince. The leader has just finished the race. Jason Short finished first. The race dictator finished P2. Dave B Racing finished third. Toddy Mustang finished P4. Fireball finished P5. Johnny Prince finished 6th. That Canadian guy finished P7. Chris Budd is P8. Chris Budd finished 8th.